Lords of the Fallen 2, yes, I'm calling it Lords of the Fallen 2, is a strange game. At first, I really did not like it, everything felt wrong. Then I started to dislike it even more. But then, just like with the first Souls game I played, it clicked. And I had a pretty good time. Let me explain. So, this is a reboot of the first big Souls-inspired game, Lords of the Fallen 2014. At that time, the craze for Souls had begun. People were getting into these games and everyone was excited to see what another studio inspired by Daddy Miyazaki might do with the gameplay formula. So, German studio Deck13 delivered something. Lords of the Fallen was received with mixed feelings. On one hand, it looked really good, especially when compared to, sorry Souls fans, the ugly Dark Souls 1 and 2. Yes, DS1 is god tier game design, but it is an ugly game. Even then, and especially now, while Lords of the Fallen 2014 even now looks pretty okay. But unfortunately, while Deck13 got down the visuals and the idea, simple methodical combat, unfortunately the execution was not that great. I did a whole video about it, but basically our main guy felt fast and slow at the same time. Controlling him was like driving a tractor on ice. And bosses were kinda boring. So yeah, decent first try, but remembered only because it was the first. But Deck13 did not stop. They made Mecha Souls Surge 1 and 2. The second was really good. Unfortunately, they did not get to make Lords 2. Well, they started, but due to various deals and problems, they moved on, which is sad, as I think Lords 2 might have been very good, because Deck had learned a lot by making these three games. We get to 2023 and Lords of the Fallen is made by HEXWORKS as their first Souls game. And it's a strange game. On paper, it's interesting dark fantasy Souls, with gimmick being that we have a lantern and we shift from the world of the living to the world of the dead, umbral world, by using the lantern. This gives us basically a second life like in Sekiro, because if we get killed in the living world, we get transformed to the umbral world and we can continue to fight on. And umbral world also is used to traverse some parts that can't be accessed otherwise. On paper, it all sounds good, but like I said, I like and I hate the game at the same time. Just like the 2014 game, this looks good. Maybe the visuals are not that inventive or stunning from showing us something really new, but the level of detail is really nice. Boss visual design is interesting, and overall, you can see that the work that has gone into making this, even if a bit generic dark fantasy world, is a lot. The game looks good. I like the visuals, I like the style, I like the direction of the visuals. It's good. But the gameplay, specifically the enemy placement in the world, they wanted to speed this game up. They wanted the exploration and fights to be more frantic and chaotic than in a traditional Souls game. And they did that by making multiple enemies attack you at the same time. And in the Umbral world, you are never safe because enemies will keep on spawning next to you, and if you spend too much time in the Umbral world, you will receive a visit from a really strong enemy that will probably one-shot you. And in the living world, more than not, you will be faced with melee and ranged enemies at the same time, and they hit hard and push you off ledges and cliffs. A lot. Like a lot. HEXWORKS really overused that gimmick. I hate it. And while bosses are relatively weak, the main challenge is getting to them. It's like Demon Souls, or at some points even original Dark Souls 1, where the journey sometimes is even more important than the destination, than the boss fight. And if the rumors are right, they started this game with exactly that philosophy, as New Game Plus is actually the intended way the game was supposed to be played. That is, they did not have fixed beacons, checkpoints where you can teleport to, but only a very interconnected world and temporary checkpoints. That sounds interesting. That sounds hard, but interesting. But at some point, I guess they decided it will be too hard, probably, and remade the game with fixed checkpoints, but they left in, of course, the shortcuts that connect areas and specific places where you can place temporary checkpoints. And I like the idea. It's good. I think they also tuned up the power of the regular enemies. Because they wanted to compensate for the downscale in the difficulty. I have no sources on that, but I feel like that might have been the case, because the mobs feel really overtuned, and fights with them, even at the start of the game, are unnecessary, chaotic, and they hit so hard. Basic mob with one hit can take at least half of your health bar away. And, well, I mean, on one hand, get good, scrub. On the other hand, I don't know if it's like a really good way to introduce your game, because I like Souls games when I'm one-on-one with enemies. Most memorable boss fights and general fights are when I fight enemies one-on-one, when the fight becomes a dance. Here it's very chaotic, so I mean, some people might like it, and on one hand, it might be a logical evolution of the Souls formula, making it a bit more like God of War, a bit more like Devil May Cry, just adding more to the challenge. Because if you play now Dark Souls 1 or even Dark Souls 2, the challenge is laughable. You just go around every enemy and backstab them multiple times. That's about it you need to do. So maybe they were targeting a bit more hardcore-ish audience, so that might be good, and why not approach the game with the mentality of get good, scrub? Because a recent game, Lies of P, also did that. I started this game, and because of the reasons I just described, I felt very annoyed by it. And then I got even more frustrated with the game. I almost quit the game and decided I will just not make a video about it, because I have not gotten far enough into the game to talk about it. But after a while, when I accepted the way of how I must play it, I started to kinda like it. I started to click with it, just like the original Souls games. Player has to accept the rules that the devs set out for him. That's why the original Souls is still seen by many as a hard game, because people just refuse to obey the game's rules, to obey the rules that the devs have set out, because there are a lot of games, like casual AAA games, cater to players. They specifically try to design the games in a way that the player can play them in any way they want, while Souls games are meant to be played a specific way. You have to observe, you have to be careful, you have to plan out your moves, and here it's something like that. When I started to understand what the game wants from me, I started to pull enemies one by one, check every corner if there is no one hiding there, used more ranged options, and I started to like my experience. I spent a pretty good time with Words of the Fallen. It's just like with modern art. I just needed to get it. At the same time, this game is not perfect. There are still many things that annoy me. The two-world system feels fussy, and I quickly get annoyed by switching between the worlds, as you can exit the dead world only at specific places. I wish they would have made the game locations smaller, as I often got confused by the pathways in each area, because they are really big and really full of different nooks and crannies to explore to, which is kinda nice, but it did not feel rewarding enough, I guess, and I would have preferred that they would have used the two-world system more and made the worlds smaller but more interesting. Here I mostly enter the dead world to run on a bridge or get over a chasm, and that's about it. I wish there were more puzzles, like something like in Titanfall 2, that level where you travel in time, or Dishonored 2 where you travel in time, something like that, because the lantern mechanic is really good. It looks good, it is interesting, it's such a super cool idea. I wish they would have used that a bit more. Now the world just feels like it is wasting my time, together with the mobs that do a lot of damage and push you off ledges. It feels like it is made just to make me spend more hours into the game. I felt like I'm wasting my time. Another thing that bugs me is the amount of items, weapons and stuff you collect, but you have very limited respec items. Maybe I missed something, but I found only a few, and that kinda sucks for a game with so many weapons and possible builds. The lack of respec is kinda sort of annoying. Also, there are no training dummies, so if you respec or want to try out another weapon, you have to go out in the world and find passive enemies. These kind of little things that are sort of kind of annoying. Of course, there are technical issues, a lot of technical issues judging by Steam reviews. I personally did not experience many problems, but who knows. One other thing is they reuse bosses so much. Early level bosses become regular enemies and you must fight multiple of them in rows and rows and rows. And they have quite large health pools and they hit hard. And reward for killing them is not that much. Also, small pet peeve. Why, when I kill an enemy, I have to manually walk over their soul thingy or whatever to collect experience? Every other Souls game just teleports the experience to me. Why? It feels unnecessary, fussy, annoying. Like, a lot of design choices in this game are annoying. But again, like I said, when I got into the rhythm of the game, I started to appreciate it. And overall, my experience was positive. It's not a bad game. While I still like the simpleness of the first game, like you have a weapon, go kill enemies, I appreciate that they tried some new stuff. So yeah, it's up to you. Technically, this is way better than the original one, but I sort of miss the simplicity and the basic form of the original after playing this, or I miss just a really good Souls game. Yeah, that's it for today, guys. I hope if you like World of the Fallen, you are enjoying it, and if you do not like World of the Fallen, I hope you are enjoying hating on it. Yeah, so have a good one, and I will see you later. Bye!